Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people just call me Brett. Thanks so much for listening today. We'll be talking about how to know if you're insulin resistant. So, one of the things to decide if a ketogenic diet is right for you or a low-carb diet is right for you. And when I say that, let me put it into context. It works for everybody, but there's some people that a keto or low-carb diet is especially effective for. It helps to know if you're insulin resistant. Now, if you already have type 2 diabetes, you don't need to worry about this. You're past insulin resistant. I mean, you're still insulin resistant, but you're on the most extreme end version of it. But most people begin their insulin resistance 10, 15 years before they're ever diagnosed type 2. And there's some ways you can know. That's what we'll be talking about today. A disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I have no formal medical training, and I'm not pretending to be that. I'm simply sharing with you my personal experiences, my personal research, of which I have done a ton over the past 5 years, hundreds and hundreds of hours. All that being said, nothing I say in this podcast is meant to be specific diet or weight loss advice for you, and certainly not medical advice for you. You should always consult with a medical professional. This is just simply my personal experiences and my personal opinion. Follow us on Instagram. That's where the stories. I used to use Snapchat to share what I eat. There's just too many social medias. Can't keep up with all of them. And since Instagram added the story feature, that's basically what I was doing on Snap. So I'm doing all that on Instagram now. Fat Guy Podcast is the username. That's also the username on Facebook, where I do most of my posting. And then Twitter is the last one. And not basically just what gets shared on Instagram and Facebook just kind of carries over to Twitter. But if that's your favorite social media, you can certainly follow us there as well. Fat Guy Podcast, the username. Subscribe on the Google Play Store or on Apple Podcast. Just search for Fat Guy Podcast. And if you don't understand any of that, maybe you found this as a post on Facebook and you're just listening to it and you don't understand podcast, it's real easy. You can download the Spreaker app, Spreaker. Once you download it, it's free. Search for Fat Guy Podcast. Hit the heart button, like, follow, subscribe, and you can get caught up on all new episodes and go back and listen to old ones. So are you insulin resistant? So I'm going to be talking about a surefire way to know exactly where you are in terms of how sensitive your cells are to insulin, which is reasonably inexpensive. And then I'll be talking about completely free ways that you can just look at your body, things that are going on with you, and know if you're likely insulin resistant. So you can choose to avail yourself of one or both of those methods. So the first one is going to be what's called a glucose tolerance test. And they have a 3-hour and a 4-hour glucose tolerance test. Now, I think it's like $10 more for the 4-hour one, so it's not that much more expensive. But obviously, it's going to mean another hour out of your day. So basically how that works is you're going to show up at the lab, and I'll tell you how you can get it done without your doctor. Matter of fact, your doctor probably won't even prescribe it, which is a travesty in itself, but I'll digress on that. But you'll show up at the lab, and they'll take your blood, and then you'll drink a jar of really sweet stuff. It has 75 grams of sugar in it. Now, you have to be fasted, which means you'll stop eating at like 6 or 7 the night before. You won't eat anything all night. You'll get up and you'll go to do this test. So you'll do this test fasted. And you'll drink this, it depends by place, but I think usually it's orange flavored. But it's like orange flavored Kool-Aid. It's really sweet. You'll drink it at 75 grams of sugar. And then they'll check your sugar an hour after, 2 hours after, and 3 hours after. And they'll even do it 4 hours after if you do the 4-hour one. So it's going to take up your day. So you're going to have to plan it on the day that you can take off. You can leave the facility, though. So I know in Dothan, you'll be doing it over at LabCorp, which is close to some shopping. It's on the east side of the circle. So there may be a couple of things you could go and do in between tests. But, bring an iPad or your Android device or a book or listen to music or, if you have work you can do or whatever. It'd be really worth it. It'll tell you how badly insulin resistant you are. Okay? It'll tell you how much insulin your body has to shoot out to get your blood sugar down. So people that are really insulin sensitive, so normal, genetically superior, healthy people, and these are the people who can eat anything and don't get fat, by the way, they'll release very little insulin and the blood sugar will come right down. And then people who are somewhere in the middle will shoot out a moderate amount of insulin and then the blood sugar will come down. And then people who are severely insulin resistant, like myself, and probably you if you're really overweight, you're going to see a ton of insulin go out to get the sugar down. And so it's really important to know how bad off you are. It'll let you know how close you are to being diagnosed diabetic, because the last step is eventually your beta cells just die in your pancreas from having to pump out so much insulin. And when that happens, blood sugar goes out of control. What little insulin you do put out is not enough, and the blood sugar rages out of control. So this test will help you know how close you are to being diagnosed type 2 diabetic. So there's a lot of good reasons to get it. It costs about $70. And like I said, LabCorp and Dothan will do it, and that's over on the east side of the circle. It's over by what barbecue is that? Is it Sonny's? What's the name of that barbecue? It's not Sonny's. Anyway, whatever the barbecue place is over on the east side of the circle, right across the street from, almost right across the street from Sonic and Crystal and the Mexican place, all that, over on the east side of the circle. So how do you order it? Well, you'll go to a website called Request a Test, and create an account there, search for glucose tolerance test, and it'll show you that it's available at LabCorp, and it shows you it's also available at some other facility. I'm not sure where that facility is. I just use LabCorp because it's close to my house. And you'll select that as your facility. You'll make your payment, and you'll schedule a time to go to LabCorp, and that's as easy as it is. Now, if you don't want to waste all day and you don't care about knowing for sure, or maybe you don't have $70 or any of the other reasons that may not be a good option for you, and I understand there's a lot of reasons it may not be a good option for some people, there are things about your body that will tell you if you're insulin resistant. And so we'll go through them. I'll go through what I believe or I know actually from all my reading and research are the most indicative of being insulin resistant to the least, but all of them to some degree, and especially if they're combined together, of insulin resistance. So the first one is carrying extra weight around your belly. That's a sure sign you're insulin resistant. And I would say even more specifically, so carrying weight around the belly is a sign. But if you want to knock it out of the park for sure, 100% sign, it's when you're skinny fat. And if you don't know what that is, you see it in women, but you really see it in men. So you walk up behind a guy, and he looks like he's wearing size 34 pants or whatever. He doesn't look like he's that wide. But when he turns to the side, that gut sticks way out. This is what typically would be called a beer belly, I guess. So the guy is not wide. He's love handle to love handle is pretty narrow. But you twist him sideways, and he's real deep. You got that skinny fat. So they skinny from the back, fat from the side. You're 100% insulin resistant. You're on your way. If you ain't already been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you will be soon. It's just a matter of days, weeks, or months, or years. 100% you need to be getting on low carb, preferably keto, immediately. The second one is one that I noticed I guess I first noticed it about 3 or 4 years before I was diagnosed as being pre-diabetic. And I asked my doctor about it, and that's skin tags. Now, mine show up around my neck. So if you don't know what a skin tag is, you can Google it, but it's just a little piece of skin that just starts growing off your body. They're like little knobs, little nubs of skin. And I remember asking my doctor, I'm like, at that time, I was like, man, what are these? He's like, oh, they're skin tags. And I'm like, well, what causes them? He's like, oh, we don't know what causes them. Well, turns out we do know what causes them. Insulin resistance is what causes them. And they'll show up around your neck, primarily. Now, they can show up other places, but these are the 3 main places that they show up. Around your neck, under your armpits, and in your groin area. So if you got skin tags, especially a lot of them, but even if you just got a few, that's a pretty good sign that you're probably insulin resistant. That's what causes that. There's a strong correlation between insulin resistant people and skin tags. And skin tags are harmless. They're just annoying. If you ask your doctor about them, he'll offer to burn them off. I just take mine and cut them off with fingernail clippers. I've sterilized the fingernail clippers and cleaned the side up real good with some rubbing alcohol and just clipped them right off. And It'll bleed a little bit and then it goes away. Nevertheless, again, that's not medical advice. Don't go cutting off yourself and say the fat guy told you to do it. So the third sign is really pretty good indication that you have it too, especially when you combine it with the other two signs. If you have one of these, boy, probably. If you have two of them, I mean, it's pretty much a home run, your insulin resistance. If you got all of them, I mean, there really ain't much way around it. But I would say if you got any of these, it's a really high likelihood that you're insulin resistant. But the third one would be dark coloration on the back of your fingernails, or not fingernails, but dark coloration on the back of your fingers. It could be a dark coloration like under your armpit, and you'll have like that brown or darkened skin swath around your neck. And you've seen people, if you don't have this, I know you've seen people that had it. It's very obvious. When you see these people's fingers, especially around the knuckles, it'll be darker, but even in between the knuckles, it'll be a little bit darker. But they just have that darker skin. To the point it almost looks like they have like African American skin on the back of fingers if they're white. And then the rest of them looks white. I haven't seen it so much in African Americans to know what the back of their fingers would look like. So if that's you, I'm not sure I could tell you as far as the fingers go, but I know it'd be very noticeable under the armpits and especially around the neck. So you'll see it's just a darkened skin swath that'll go around the neck, or it'll be a big, area under the armpit or whatever. And if you're noticing a trend here, those are kind of the same, right in line with the same place you see the skin tag. The last issue, this is a minor issue, and this one is hard to know. I would just kind of use it in addition to the others because there's so many reasons you could have skin issues on your face. But skin issues on your face is also can be a sign. It's something like acne. I get this, and I've got it for years. Of course, I also have something called rosacea, which causes me to have skin problems as well. So it's hard to know what causes what. I would say if you have skin issues as an adult, it could be a sign of insulin resistance, but especially if you have it in addition to one or more of these other signs that we've talked about. So you've listened to the podcast and you're like, oh God, I didn't have any idea I was insulin resistant. What does this mean? Well, the first thing that means is that you're definitely going to be diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic at some point. And without the glucose tolerance test, you don't know how close you are to that. It could be next week. It could be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. But insulin resistance is the beginning tidal wave that ends up at being a type 2 diabetic. So your cells become insulin resistant, which means your body has to pump out more insulin than it should to deal with blood glucose. And it keeps doing that, and it's a compounding thing, so that it becomes more and more and more. And when you go to your doctor and they check your blood sugar, and your blood sugar is normal, and they send you on your way going, oh, you're fine, that doesn't mean anything. You could be pumping out 10 times as much insulin as you should have to pump out to keep your blood sugar that way. What they should be checking is your insulin, but they don't. They check your blood sugar. For a lot of reasons. I guess the primary one is because insurance probably won't pay for it. But if you can afford it, you can ask your doctor not only for the glucose tolerance test, but you can also ask him for a fasting insulin test. Now, a fasting insulin test is not quite as accurate as a blood glucose tolerance test, but it will help you get some kind of an idea. You want your fasting insulin to be less than like 24, I think, to give you some assurance that you're somewhat in a good range. But the glucose tolerance test is much better. But that's what it means. It means you're on the fast track to diabetes. You will be diagnosed to it at some point. It also means that insulin is almost constantly raging through your body, which means it's destroying cells, it's destroying your arteries, and it's causing you are becoming more and more likely to have a heart attack. It's causing you cardiovascular disease. It's making you more likely to have a stroke. It's making you more likely to have an aneurysm. It's making you more likely to have Alzheimer's disease. And it's making you more likely to have cancer. All these things are heavily influenced. And from all the deep research that's coming in now, especially in the past decade or so, pretty much it's been determined that chronically high levels of insulin and blood sugar, but primarily insulin, are really what causes heart disease and causes stroke and causes aneurysms and causes, or maybe not aneurysms, but causes Alzheimer's and cancers and all these things. So I mean, it's not just something to go, I got elevated insulin levels. It's very serious. It's not just making you fat, it's killing you. So it's something that you want to take control of your health with right now. And a ketogenic diet, well, let me take that back. Honestly, a ketogenic diet is the second best way to take care of it, but it's probably the one that you're most likely to do. The best way to take care of insulin resistance is to go into a fasting regimen. Fasting one day, eating one day, fasting 2 days in a row, and then eating one day. Fasting as much as you can within reason. Fasting where there is no kind of food or calories or sugar or anything coming to your body gives your cells a rest, and it will start the healing of the insulin resistance in the cells. And Dr. Wong, who's a nephrologist, that's a kidney specialist, he runs a center there where this is all they do is just help people, and they use fasting to do it, and he has a crazy success of making people better. So two things will happen then. One, you will actually start the slow process of reversing your insulin resistance, but you'll also be losing weight if you do fasting. But the second best way, which is still really, really good, is a ketogenic diet. And if you want to get best bang for your buck, it's a ketogenic diet combined with intermittent fasting. And so I would say this: eat a ketogenic diet, which is low carb, moderate protein, and high fat. You're going to begin losing weight on that, and you should feel pretty good after you get through that first week to 2 week phase of adaptation, which can be kind of rough, but look, stick it out. You're a grown boy or grown girl. You can handle it. No whining. And, once you make it through that first week or so, you should find that you're becoming naturally less hungry. And that makes it a perfect time to segue into combining daily intermittent fasting with that. And what that means is you're still going to eat every day, but you're going to eat within an 8-hour window. So you'll eat like between noon and 8 every day, and then you won't eat anything after that. And that doesn't mean just not meals. That means not nothing. You don't put any calories in your mouth. Not a Coke, not a glass of orange juice, not a cookie, not a cracker, not a piece of candy. You just drink water. That's it. You drink water. You want a Diet Coke? I don't recommend them, but if you are going to drink them with the meal. Drink it with the meal you have at noon, because you're spiking your insulin then anyway. So go ahead and have it with that meal. Between the meal you have at noon and between the meal you have at 8, you just drink water. You don't drink anything that'll spike insulin. And you're like, well, how can diet drinks spike insulin? They don't have any sugar in them. Well, they just do. That's all. All the research points to that, and I can tell you from my own personal experiences, because I've done 2 or 3 times now. I've tested my blood sugar before and after doing nothing but drinking a Diet Coke. One time it was, I actually did it with Powerade one time, which is sweetened with the same stuff Coke Zero is sweetened with. I've done it with Coke Zero, and I've done it with something. I did it with unsweetened tea that I sweetened to myself with stevia. So look, as soon as your tongue tastes something sweet, your body thinks sugar's coming, whether sugar's coming or not, and it starts releasing. It doesn't matter that it isn't actually sugar. Your body's just been trained over millions of years of adaptation to understand it's time to release insulin when something sweet touches the tongue, and so it just releases some insulin. That doesn't release a ton. It doesn't release as much as if you ate a Reese's peanut butter cup, but it does. And so the whole key to healing the cells from insulin resistance and losing weight is to keep that insulin as low as possible for as long as possible. That's it. There's nothing complicated about it. There's no need to understand anything complex. All you need to know to lose weight is that you've got to keep insulin as low as possible for as long as possible. That's why fasting works. That's why keto works. That's why time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, as I've just described, eating only between noon and 8 works. All these things do the same thing. They keep your insulin as low as possible for long periods of time. That's why they work. That's why it's the best way to lose weight ever. And it's also why it's the only way and the best way to start reversing that insulin resistance that you've built up over the years. So I hope that this podcast has helped you in some way. If it has, you don't know how much it could help somebody else that's on the path to diabetes, that's on the path to dying from some obesity-related disease. So I implore you to share it. Share it on your Facebook or share it on your Twitter or whatever. You never know whose life you'll change. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's Fat Guy Podcast, the username on all 3. And subscribe. Apple Podcast and the Google Play Store. It's Fat Guy Podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast there. And if you don't understand all that kind of stuff, you can just download the free Spreaker app, Spreaker, Once you download it, search for Fat Guy Podcast and subscribe to us there. It's real quick and easy. And not only can you catch up on any new ones that come out, you can go back and see all old ones. So just listen to your heart's content, and I hope that it helps you in some way. Thank you so much for listening today. Have a good day. We'll talk to you soon.